And I always start by saying we are live. So a very good afternoon to everybody who is going to be listening to our amazing LinkedIn Live today. I'm Nadine Parry, Executive and Leadership Coach and Workplace Mediator.
And I'm Mike Jackson. I'm head teacher at Cleaswell Hill School. We're a special school in Northumberland.
I'm Patrick Ford Hutchinson. I'm a phase leader at the same school.
And I'm Jenny Ling. I'm a leadership development consultant, also based in Newcastle/Northumberland.
Hi, and I'm Jan Daines. I'm an education consultant doing some leadership support, some school inspection, some quality assurance stuff, and other bits and pieces that come along. So it's good to be here.
And it's you're saying lots of bits and pieces, but actually you're doing a lot of bits and pieces that have a significant impact, right? Okay, okay. So thank you very much for to you to be here today. And this is the beginning of quite a few LinkedIn Lives that we're going to be doing on education and inviting head teachers and leaders and school staff to talk to us and to share with us how they have overcome challenges during the past 12 months. And I wanted to start with the Northeast because I have spent most of my life as a French person living in the Northeast. So I asked Jenny, who could we bring on? And Jenny immediately gave me a few names. And then here we were this week presenting, and we are here. And I think it's important to give a voice to school leaders and to staff to understand what's been happening, because we read in the newspaper, we watch TV, but I love hearing about those who are actually on the ground and making things happen. So Mike and Patrick, a huge thank you for you to be here with us today and at this time, because I know, being an ex-head teacher, that 4 o'clock is not really a time when you're on LinkedIn Live normally. There's still lots of things to do. So a very warm welcome to you. And I guess I want to start by asking you this first question, which is, can you tell us the story about your school during COVID and during the past 12 months?
It's quite a roller coaster ride, and now we're just about coming into a year of COVID, and hopefully with not another year to follow. It started off, I think we were all in a very odd position, especially in special schools, because the initial guidance given out by the government, it was that all schools had shut apart from special schools. This was in March, and we had a horrendous few days trying to find out why all of the schools were meant to shut and we were meant to stay open as well. And it took, I think, about 2 or 3 days before the guidance came out that we were meant to stay open for kids whose parents were key workers and who were involved in social care for child protection reasons rather than because of their disabilities. Because here we've got 188 children in school, and many of them have got involvement with social workers for their disability. Jan, did you want to?
No. I'm just enjoying listening to your summary. Go on, Mike.
Okay. And so when we decided first of all, we only had a handful of kids in the first week, and it grew over time increasingly parents were struggling with having their children at home. We've got some very complex needs kids in school, a big population of non-verbal autistic kids who have got rather challenging behavior as well, who find, like the rest of us, but I think they find it particularly hard. Any changes to their routine has a significant impact on their life. I think it's an extreme version of what everyone's felt over the last 12 months. And we gradually built up in numbers and then I think we almost had all the kids in the summer, didn't we, Patrick? Is that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we're built up on that run up to the summer. Then by sort of start of July, we had all kids back in some normality just before the summer holidays, which I think was really important for the type of kids we've got in our school, because then having another 6 weeks break, it meant that they had that opportunity to be in school before that next break, which made September slightly easier. But as we know, that's developed differently as well.
Was there? If I just ask a question just on that? Was there any sense at all that you might stay open throughout those summer 6 weeks?
Well,
Maintain some continuity for, particularly for the sorts of youngsters that you've described. Well, or is that just out of the question?
We did have a couple of summer activity clubs on. We had one in the first week and one in the last week.
Yeah.
We had stayed open through the Easter holidays, including the bank holidays, and the May half term, including the bank holiday as well, which was quite surreal, working during that time. The trouble with staying open over the summer would obviously have been financing it as well, which would have been a big issue. And although for quite a large time, large proportion of that first lockdown, many staff were working on a rota just so we had minimal amount of people in school, but there was a number of us who were working all the time, which wasn't too much fun, especially during the holidays. I know often people who don't work in education will think we get too many holidays, and I certainly don't think that's the case, and I really felt it not having a proper break at Easter and the May half term. You know how you get to that finish line of the holidays and recharge, ready for the next bit. And then in the summer holidays, it was that unknown, what we were going to come back to as well. And when we came back, it was a pleasant surprise, actually, that a lot of the kids, almost all of them, were really pleased to be back. We had some kids who hadn't been in school for almost 6 months, which I thought was going to be a lot more challenging than it turned out to be. And then we had a period of relative calm for about 2 months, and then we had our first case of COVID, which then we've in all had 39 cases of COVID. Almost all of those staff between the end of October and now, really, but most of them were in November, where we had to have a lot of isolation because we work in bubbles. We have 6 bubbles of pupils and staff. There's around about, I don't know, 30 kids in each bubble, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, and about 20 staff, again, sometimes more or less. And we try and keep each bubble separate as much as possible. But we had, I think all of those bubbles had to isolate at least once, once we got a case, and it was really frustrating, especially as you'd hear about cases on a Saturday morning and then have to trudge into school and get calls made to people. So I think in my position as head, it was that just not being able to switch off at all that was particularly difficult.
Do you have youngsters who are it's particularly medically vulnerable? I'm thinking respiratory wise.
We've got
maybe life limiting. Yeah, they have to be really careful with.
Yeah. Well, we had a funny situation. Well, not, it isn't funny actually.
No, but you know what you mean. Yeah.
We've got a number of young people with Down syndrome, and we had one young person. He was 17 on the Friday at the end of November, and he wasn't extremely vulnerable. He turned 18 on the Saturday, and he suddenly had gone into the extremely vulnerable group, because young adults with Downs are apparently very vulnerable. But
okay,
so there was some really weird situations like that. We've got a number of kids again, although I don't think they're on the clinically vulnerable with cerebral palsy, where their muscle tone in the chest is probably not great and things like that, but they're not on the list. We've got one lad who's on a ventilator, and he's got a tracheotomy, but his air is all filtered, and his consultant says he's not on that list. It's been quite I would say interesting learning curve, but it's been trying to kind of translate the guidance for mainstream schools into our setting. And I think what I've just gone by is using common sense and being cautious. It is what I've tried to do all the way through. Unlike other things in education where you can normally ask someone who's been through it, the really odd thing was that everyone was in this complete state of, we're all in the unknown together.
Yes. Certainly not on NPQH.
No,
you don't learn that on NPQH. There is no preview or role play on that. I want to pick up, Mike, on one thing that you've said. You've said, I've not been able to switch off. And we know, we've been head teachers, so we understand what it means. But what kept you going? What was the driver that kept you going?
I think the thing is, basically when you do this job, you want to make a difference, and it's now when you're tested. I think, I don't know, I'm fairly resilient. I wouldn't say I like a challenge after this. I'm quite looking forward to not having one. But I think part of the maybe what kept me going was we didn't know how long this was going to go on. I remember when it started, I was trying to be realistic, thinking, oh, well, maybe it'll last till June. Unfortunately, I didn't realize it would be June this year rather than last year. And so I think because we keep hoping that we're coming to the next phase, and then that's going to be it. I think everyone, not just in school, but at Christmas, when there was a lot of media interest in the vaccinations, and it was before the second wave had really hit, we all felt really optimistic that we were coming out of the woods. And then we came back after Christmas, and then there was that announcement, it was on the first day back, that we were actually going into lockdown again. And again, from a special school perspective, when the announcement was made, it said all special schools were going to be open, fully open, and they were going on about the risk and how everything else was shutting down. Obviously, the risks are higher in special schools. I think the data from the NEU showed we're about, is it 4 times more at risk than in a mainstream school? I can't remember the exact figures.
That may be wrong.
In fact, in November, I worked it out. Our rate of infection or transmission was 6,600 per 100,000 of the population for staff in our school. So it was pretty high.
That's a statistic we haven't heard in the news, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas the government seemed to think we had high immunity, so we had to carry on as normal.
Is it just worth unpicking that?
Sorry,
I just wanted to unpick it because people who don't understand the way that staff need to work to support the youngsters in a special setting like yours, maybe will go, don't want to understand why that might be. I just wondered if you or Patrick would just sort of just unpick that.
Patrick, do you want to?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing comes down to the staff ratio that in our school we have classes with 12 children in, which is one of our bigger classes, and you'd have 2-3 members of staff in there, and they're sort of our more academic pupils. For those children with the most complex needs, these children generally need one-to-one support throughout the day. And because of their complex needs, they also struggle to regulate themselves or communicate with others, which means that staff cannot keep 2-meter distance away from these children. They need to be intensive interaction the full 6 hours of the day to meet these children's needs. And then on top of that, there's obviously hygiene needs as well, where that can be toilet hygiene needs. But as Mike says, we've got children with medical needs as well, which adds the risk and we need to meet these needs. It's not the fact that because of social distancing in place, we're just going to stay 2 meters away. It's not possible. We need to be able to do this. And I think just picking up on what Mike was saying before as well about schools staying open, the staff in school, I think a lot of what gets talked about in schools, the likes of caretakers and admin staff who keep the schools open, who, as Mike said, they come out of how important they are, because these are the people that are ringing parents, keeping them in touch, telling them when there's a bubble closure, telling them when schools are open. The caretakers are having to clean deep clean areas where there's been an infection. They're having to make sure everything is clean and as safe as possible. And there's these people that don't get mentioned in media, that the people that are keeping the schools open and working even harder than they would be normally.
Yeah, good mention.
Yeah.
Can I just bring in a comment that might cause some little controversy here? Shirley DL, I think it is. Not heard all, but do you think the statistics of the government are right? Did they include that teachers worked at home during the first lockdown and then had holidays? So can't compare with, i.e. supermarket workers who'd worked right through. I think that what you're talking about, Mike and Patrick, is that you didn't work at home and you didn't have holidays. And I think that there was a misconception, not just with special, but with schools throughout, that teachers were just at home and then had a holiday. So I think I'll leave that with you to respond to.
Oh yeah, it wasn't. I don't think we had a holiday at all. With our school, I think in the first lockdown, some people had a slightly less workload, but at the time we were trying, and I think this goes across all settings, is we were trying to get to grips with what we were having to put in place. And for us, we quickly increased in numbers, really. From just after Easter, the workload was higher. All through that period of time, staff were phoning parents and sending work home, all those sorts of things. For this second lockdown, since Christmas this year, all staff in my school have been in, and we've had, I think, from maybe about from 40% of kids in after the start of the lockdown, maybe a bit less. Again, that's increased over the last few weeks. We've had about 2/3, a bit more. Some kids on part-time timetables as well over the last few weeks, and so the staff here have been working at pretty much full capacity, because as well as working face to face, they've also been providing remote learning as well, and catching up with parents where children are at home, trying to make sure they're engaging, kids are engaging in learning as well. I think the workload hasn't been down at all in this lockdown. I think, with, like Patrick had said then, some members of staff, like the office staff, the caretaking team and cleaners, have done a lot more over this last 12 months. I think the stress levels for me, for other senior leaders as well. I know Patrick's manages a fairly big team in his own phase as well, which is quite tricky. As well as, I think one of the things we found is with parents with young children as well, having to juggle childcare arrangements when their own kids and they've got their own issues around care and things as well, and family members who might not be very well. It's been a tricky time, I think, for everyone. But
and can I just ask you a question? I want to ask you, how did you and Patrick, right, in the different jobs that you are doing, how did you keep the staff going? Because we're on adversity, which is lasting for quite a long time, so it's really drawing on people's resilience. And how do you keep your staff going?
I think, first of all, we started off from a very good place. Jenny's worked here before with the staff before, and met the staff before. We started off with a strong team and with a good team spirit. One of the things that before COVID, we'd established quite big. Sorry, not big. We've got a big staff. We've got 130 staff, and I thought the best way to manage it would be breaking those staff up into smaller teams, which were phase teams of about 20 people, and so that forms quite a good size for a phase leader, which is Patrick's role, to manage, so those groups could still meet together. Unfortunately, in COVID, we can't all meet together. We used to have big briefings in the hall every week, but I think having that phase team together where they could all still meet and either moan or plan ahead, those sorts of things really helped. I think by letting staff know what my approach was, I tried to let them know a week or so in advance when we were going to go up in numbers and the reason why we were going to do that. So keeping people informed, and I think just showing that I was being cautious about the decisions that I was making, and maybe being a bit too honest on what I thought the guidance was like for us as well. I don't know, Patrick, is there?
Yeah, what's your perspective?
I think what was important in the phase teams is that people still had that voice, because we weren't mixing around school as much. It was important for the 20 or so staff that I was working with, that they could get a message to me and for them to have confidence that then I would table that at a virtual SLT and discuss those things. And that level of communication is really important, and then for me to be then able to go back to my staff group and talk about what's being said at SLT and say, right, as Mike said, in a week's time, this is what we're going to be looking to do, and let's have a look at which children we need to get into school, and letting the staff have ownership of those decisions as well. Letting them speak to the parents and make decisions. I'm speaking to this parent, and they're telling me that child is struggling to get them to school sooner rather than later, and making sure that they were involved in the decisions. And because they're involved in those decisions, they could see the value of getting individual pupils into school and increasing our numbers, and they knew why.
Yeah.
You've got a very strong, quite young, dynamic team of middle and senior leaders. And certainly when I've been in working with you, there's a tremendous feeling in the school of can do, or if we don't know how to do it, we'll find a way of doing it. You've always come across as being very positive and not seeing challenges as obstacles, but just seeing challenges as part of the day-to-day.
No, I think we were at an advantage because we had that in place anyway, and not that we haven't been tested through this period of time at all, but I think that's helped. Also, I think that there's been just being honest as well has been a big thing. Also, I've been trying to get people involved in planning for the future. For too much of my time's been spent really managing COVID and trying to model my way as the rest of the team as well through COVID. And it came at a time when we were really looking at developing school in a number of ways before COVID hit. So I haven't, it's got in the way significantly, but we've still been planning for the future and managed to get a few things in place that despite COVID as well, which I've been very pleased that we've managed to get that done, because it's improved the provision in school.
Can I just ask you, we were talking to some teachers earlier on this week, and they were talking about where they were last March compared to where they were now. And they were talking about a huge shift in terms of online learning, and how much the teachers, the online learning hasn't been fed to them by somebody. Most of the online learning has been developed in school by teachers who may have had limited experience before last March. Now, and I think that the impact on their practice will carry on through. There are things that they will carry on that will be done differently because of the experience they've had over the past year. Can you, perhaps Patrick, because you're sort of the phase leader, can you just give us an idea about the movement that you've had and how you've supported the online learning through the year, and where you've come from and to?
I think this is where, as Mike said, the two main lockdowns were very, very different for schools, because the first lockdown, it was very much a response of what can we get put in place, how can we still have our best impact on children. But for this second lockdown, it was very much where we could plan ahead. We knew that it may happen at some point. If it didn't happen, there was going to be isolation periods for groups of staff and their pupils, where we'd have to have something in place. So what that allowed us to do is to work in those phase groups, which have become, as Mike said again, has become very, very important for staff to bounce ideas off each other and to think about what our kids need, and us to be responsive. And one of the major things which is going to be a change in practice for us at school is that our children are here because they've got an education healthcare plan. And now we've got a system where we can use remote learning to communicate with parents and set opportunities for children to progress towards their long-term targets in their EHCP. So it's been a great way of setting up learning for the future, where we can really get parents on board in helping children meet those EHCP targets. That is the reason why they're at our school.
So do you find now that you've got a channel into the child's home more than you did have?
Yeah, we definitely do. The issue is still that you have some families that aren't as responsive as you would hope. And it's just going to be a slow process of really showing these families that by engaging in these systems that we've got and engaging the way that we hope to use them as we go forward, that it will benefit their child so much, and it's making them available. I know for a lot of our families that we work with is that when children get home and they come away from school, they see home and school very separate. So we don't want to intrude on that. I think this is a national thing where we have to be very careful as educationalists that we don't blur that boundary between home and school, because they are two very separate things. And for anyone's mental health, that they need to have that shut off time away from education. But I think what has opened up is the ability for us to support families at home where we may not have done it as well in previous times.
It's a great distinction to make, isn't it? Because there is I said channel into home, which wasn't a very good turn of phrase, because obviously there's confidentiality and not everybody wants to have their home looked into. But it's really interesting that you're saying that there's the plus side and then there's the side that you've got to be careful about.
Yeah.
But in terms of the hard to reach parents, have you found that you're now able to have conversations with parents more easily?
I think because we've got a method now, we've got a real method to how we can use home learning, remote learning, and something that we've seen work and we know works well. It means that we can be passionate and really believe in what we're using in that aspect of education, and it means that we can set up. In the future, we can set up training for parents. We can show the impact that this will have on their children, and we can show that we can be open to exactly what we're doing in school, and we can offer with a lot of our parents that need a little bit more support. So we can offer that advice and support through this remote way where they can access it any time where they may be sat at home and something may flick up on the phone. They can look, my son or daughter is really engaged in that at school and they've done really well. I could try something like that at home to have that positive connection with them in a different way. So I think it has to be very much a supportive arm we lend, rather than you must be doing this, you must be doing that. I think it's very much there for parents and families to use how they need it, and this is my point before that. I think we have to be very careful that we don't intrude on that, because I know with my own children at home that some aspects of home learning during that first lockdown was very stressful, and it can become very, very difficult to educate your own children, where you think, I can do this day to day for my job, but put me in front of my own children trying to
very
educate.
different.
Yes.
Very different. Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're all parents, and I think we've all experienced some of that. Yeah. Very different.
I have a question about, you mentioned online learning and the quality of learning earlier on. How have you been able to monitor the quality of learning?
Well, with the again in this second lockdown, because we weren't being responsive, we had it all planned. We're able to use platforms where we could respond to the children, and you can get uploads of parents, and then you can set next steps in learning. And I think those next steps in learning are the most important. That if a child's done something straight away, they're not then waiting for the next point of work to come out. Teachers are able to continue that planning, teaching, assessment element that they would in school by assessing what the child's done and giving them those next steps to increase the depth of knowledge.
Okay.
As well, with one of the things that, again, that in my position is we need to monitor the quality of learning, and the usual lesson learning observations and things haven't been able to take place, which is where having the delegated leadership that we've got in place now with the phase leaders who are monitoring closely what's going on in their team, it's been essential. So I'm getting feedback, and we know what's going on. Again, with parents, I think we've been pretty lucky in that we've kept them informed by having contact. We've been able to minimize any issues, really, and I think the phase leaders and class teachers have had a lot more regular contact with all the parents than they normally would. As you know, there's normally a handful of parents that you have an awful lot of contact with, but it's been quite a wide group this time.
Jan, do you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up. I mean, it's fascinating. I just wanted to ask if you consider maybe two extreme examples where should we call it remote learning, where that's been most effective, and compare it with where remote learning, for whatever reason, has been not effective, or certainly not as, or let's say least effective. Well, what would you say are the main reasons for that? So it could be a parental support issue, it could be a technical, it could be an access issue, it could be an individual student issue. What would you say?
I think where it's been most difficult, it's tended to be, and we found that, especially in the first lockdown, as time went on, children and parents struggled to engage with remote learning, and it was particularly the case with younger children and with children with more complex needs, who, again, as I think Patrick mentioned before, often our children see home and school as very, very different places, and learning takes place in school, not at home. What our response to that was by getting those children in as soon as it was safe to do so. So they were our priority groups. Have you got some positive remote learning ones, Patrick?
I think the most positive remote learning is the practical activities that children have been able to take part in with their parents. I think when it's an activity where it's a child sitting down with a piece of work, your more formalized learning where they do it independently, that's the work that can over time think, oh, not the same stuff again, or I'm sitting down at the dining room table doing maths at this time, English this time. But if you're engaging the parents in an activity that they're doing in a practical way, and the parents are enjoying that time with the child doing it as well, I think that's the most successful learning. And what that approach means is that parents get the opportunity to take the learning a little bit in the direction they want to as well, just as we would in school, where if a child is suddenly engaged in something, you wouldn't shut them off and go on to the next question. You would follow that route down and see where it takes you a little bit, and it's given the parents the parameters to be able to do that as well. So they're enjoying it, and they're not seeing it as a chore. They're getting the same enjoyment out of it, and spending that time with their children and watching them progress.
Yeah, Jim, that's really fascinating, because both your answers, as in the most challenging where it wasn't working so well, and at best when it referred to engagement. Yeah. Now I know there'll be issues under the engagement thing, but it's fascinating, isn't it? And I think what you were just saying there, Patrick, is a really good bit of learning for people who don't understand education, understand teachers, is just the skill with which teachers and leaders naturally find ways to promote engagement by you talked about following up with just the right level of questioning, to reinforce or to just extend, or to whatever you're seeking to do. I mean, my hope for this period is that there'll be a kind of a dawning of realization with regard to the not just a level of skill. I don't mean a sort of to set you apart level of skill, that only teachers can do that, but actually a realization of, wow, okay, so how can we learn to mimic and reproduce those skills to develop that level of engagement at all levels of education? Yeah. So I have a comment on the question, really, but I wanted to, it was on my chest.
Do you think there's also a movement with parents of understanding more about their child's learning, because the learning is no longer happening necessarily in the school, but it's happening with them?
What do you think?
And reflecting on what you were saying, Patrick, about doing things together, do you feel that going forward this will result in a more engaged parental involvement?
Yeah, and I think that's something, if we look before COVID, that was something we were trying to do already with parents groups and parents evenings report. Look, you're always trying to get this parental engagement.
Yeah.
But the COVID's force the issue that little bit where you have to really change your direction, and it becomes your absolute school focus. And I think that's something, the lessons we've learned is something that we can really take forward, because we know with all children, if parents are involved in their education, they're going to be more successful, they're going to make more progress.
But the level of engagement is also linked to how we are communicating with people. And I'm sure that you've kind of reassessed how you've been communicating with parents and with students. And how has your communication changed over the past year?
Yeah, good question.
Could you say that again, please?
Yeah, I'm talking about engagement and communication, because, you know, before you've had the parents into school every day, and now it's obviously very different. So how have you adapted your communication plan to ensure that you keep developing the level of engagement of parents?
One of the things that I've done is I've used Facebook a lot to, again, I said I was letting teachers know and staff in advance what I thought we were going to do and the reasons behind it. And I used Facebook a lot, which got incredible, in fact, quite scary numbers reading it, and made me double check
Yes.
what I was putting on there, just to. And again, I think that helped as well. Just explaining the decisions, and parents had then comment, and we got overwhelmingly positive feedback from that. And that's I've always kind of tried to distance myself from social media, especially in this job. But I think using the school Facebook page like that has worked really well, and even some of we did some quite silly videos with the staff doing dances and things, so the kids could see it at home when they were at home, which again got thousands of views, and that helped an awful lot. I think the way I'd be looking to, we're already looking to see how we can get parents into school more and more engaged. Obviously, we can't at the minute. I think some of the relationships that staff have built up over the phone or by delivering work packs just to say hello has really reinforced relationships. And I think a lot of parents, in fact, I would think almost all, really appreciate us now, having seen what it's like on the coal face if we're not here. Well, we are here, but if their kids aren't here. But is there any other bits, Patrick, you'd add?
Well, I was just thinking about some of the most positive things I've seen is video calls in classrooms between the group of children that are in school to a child that's out of school. And
brilliant.
In our setting, communication is a massive focus for
very powerful
the majority, if not all, the children. So them having that level of communication is been massive, and it was such a great thing to see. If someone had told me a year ago I'd be watching a class with my child at home on the board, you would have gone, no, that won't happen. It's a massive positive that's came out of this situation.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to develop that because it's a really interesting question. I was just thinking, so that was about communication methods that have changed, and you immediately went to Facebook and you talked about some sort of video sort of sharing. But what about your networks? And where I'm really coming from is thinking about the support. You know, have sort of hitherto sort of charted networks developed where, Mike, maybe you've been in touch with other head teacher colleagues to, you know, either bang your heads collectively against the laptop or, you know, share successes. And same with you, you know, have you found that support's there, or has that been a big problem for you?
I think we've got a head teachers group in Northumberland, a special school head teachers group, and it was good airing our frustrations, but at the same, and to know it's quite a relief to know other people are in exactly the same boat, but it doesn't it doesn't get you out of the boat as well.
No.
But so there's been a lot of meetings between special heads, which again where we share advice or and how we're approaching a situation, and we've tended to have similar approaches as well, so which makes it easier to say, the school 10 miles away are doing something exactly the same as us if it were to be questioned. Not that it has really. There's schools northeast that have various meetings as well for heads, and they have a special school forum as well, which was useful. I think that started in the summer and it's still going on. I haven't been recently, been too busy. As far as teachers go, in the school we've been really restricted to phase teams, as far as I can think. Patrick, is that be right?
Yeah, we've been very much restricted to phase teams, but staff are very much communicating around school with emails, phone calls, and can talk to each other. I think over this period, I've sort of kept in touch with school improvement partner governors about different things that are going on in school and got their advice, but also then spoke to other teachers that work in schools in the area about things that are working really well for them. And an example being that I know a secondary school in North Tyneside were able to put me onto a maths remote learning platform that worked really well for our most academic pupils in maths, those hitting GCSEs. So it was good to share that good practice, and this is really again developed since that first lockdown. So I think again the point being where we are now with that sharing of resource and what's working really well is very much different to this time last year.
Yeah, great.
We just spoke about the governors. Let's talk about them a little bit. How did the governors supported the school?
The governance or government?
Governors.
Sorry, my sound's pretty bad.
Your school governors.
School governors.
School governors. Yeah.
Well, I meet with the chair of governors every probably month. He comes into school and we have a socially distanced meeting. Also, I'd be in contact with him on the phone for those bigger decisions that I had to make. Just after the announcement at Christmas, I remember having a long conversation, not at Christmas, just as we came back, in the evening, just because we were expecting the situation for special schools to be clarified a bit more, thinking that sense would prevail, which it didn't. But then all special schools took a similar approach to us anyway. So I've had a lot of meetings, just giving him what's been happening. I've kept in contact with emails for any big developments. Again, they can see sometimes I'll send them the bulletins that I send around to staff to say what's happening over the next few weeks. We've managed to have a few governor monitoring visits as well, so they can come in and see what's happening in school. We've tried to reduce the number of visitors into school, but at the same time, I don't want that to get in the way of school development. Usually we'd have governors coming in and they'd go into classrooms and things like that and have it. So obviously we can't do that, but they can come in and meet me or another member of the team and talk about specific topics. So a lot of we've still had a high level of engagement, and I think there's been one of the questions the chair of governors always says is, and how are you? And then
Right. No.
which is it's nice to hear, and it's an interesting question, really, when you're asked that, because I think the answer is still standing. is the because despite everything that's been thrown at schools and school staff over the last year, that we are still standing and trying to do our best. At the minute, I feel, especially last week when we had a bit of sunshine and the R rates going down and things like that, there was a real lift in mood across school, I felt. Did you, Patrick, as well?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think there was a lift, and there was that, again, that light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know how far that light's off, but there is a feeling
there, isn't it?
yeah, that's not much longer, and we can build on the fantastic things that have gone on over COVID, but we can get back to some of the normality of being able to mix around and share things a lot more.
It's interesting. May I just, because it follows up perfectly, this is exactly what I was thinking just whilst you were starting that, Mike, was what do you think when you have the chance to look back on this period of time? Now, I know this is a bit of a strange question because you're not there, but what, so I'm kind of asking you to project forward, and when, put yourself in a position, so when you have an opportunity, what do you think it will be that you've taken from this? Do you think it'll be, well, I don't know, let's just leave it at the question at that.
Well,
the whole period, yeah.
I was mentioning how I've been really trying to look at how we developed school over the last 3 to 5 years, and part of what I've taken away from this period is, well, we're getting through this, which is I think is, without doubt, the most challenging time in modern memory for working in education. And so it's given me the belief that we can try lots of different things in the future, aim really high, and that's what's been part of what you asked earlier, what's been getting me through in professionally. What's been getting me through is looking ahead and thinking, okay, how can we build on what we've got? Because there have been some positives that we found from having to work like this. I'm looking forward to having a lot more face-to-face meetings with people and having children being able to go into classrooms without fearing crossing bubbles and things like that. But for me, I think it shows the resilience that we've got in school as well. And when people have had to isolate and things like that, we've managed to cope. We've managed to stand up to the challenges that this has brought us so far. We've managed. I think the tricky bit, and again, especially after Christmas, January is normally quite gloomy month anyway, but I think this month, the kind of that collective feeling of shattered optimism that was around there as well was quite hard when everyone's together. Normally, you can pull each other up. I think we've managed to do that, and I think we're out the other side of it. But for me, it's, well, let's see what other challenges are ahead. And I think one thing I've been pleased with is how the staff team here as well have responded to the challenges. It's easy to, like anything, when the challenges aren't as high, it's easy to look good. But when being faced with what we've been faced with and dealing with their own staff and the kids and the problems that the families have got and things like that, it's really shown the skills of the phase leaders particularly because, as Jenny mentioned before, they're quite a young group of leaders, and I think the experiences that they've had during this last year is going to be really useful for them as they move on through their careers, because they'll know what they've been through and how they've had to utilize new skills to get through that period of time as well.
What about you, Patrick?
I think it's exactly as Mike said there. It's very much been a learning curve all the way through it, and it's for me in that level of leadership. It's all about building those skills and just adding them to all the time and making me a better leader, which will make people feel more comfortable in their own jobs at who I'm leading, and make sure that the outcomes for pupils are even better than we have. And I think it's very much been a learning curve, and you find out a lot about yourself. You find where you think, oh, I need to develop that area a little bit more, and it's been a good time for that. I feel.
Okay, great.
So Patrick, do you have any ambition to become head teacher one day?
That's put you on the spot, hasn't
Obviously
it?
not in this school.
No, I think yeah. I think going forward, I want to progress definitely with my leadership and look at the next stage. And the next stage, I've just recently finished my MPQSL, which I did with Jenny as well. So it's the next stage after that, and hopefully some doors will open. And as far as I enjoy it, and I very much have enjoyed this period of reflection of how I've had to deal with situations and how I've had to develop, and that's an ongoing journey in leadership. It's hopefully something where I develop those skills, the role will increase as well.
Yeah, I'm asking you because we talk a lot about an exodus of head teachers, and they have to be replaced, and we all have a legacy. They have to be replaced. So it's good to hear that somebody young like you has not been phased by COVID and still want to be a head teacher, perhaps more than ever, because you've managed to overcome everything.
Well,
so
what's it like to happen again?
No, I'm sure.
But you know what to do next time, won't you?
You are equipped. You talked about skills, and you are equipped to face, what you don't know really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the leading and managing staff through this time has been something that you've had to develop fast, because as Mike touched on as well, it's easy leading people when things are going well, but when things aren't going well, that's really when you learn.
Yeah,
I think you've given a couple of both of you a really positive message there, because it's only when you're tested that you find out about yourself, and that's the key moments of learning. I really believe that if you go through life without being tested, you're not going to develop your potential in that sort of way. And you've both kind of revealed such a positive mindset with regard to that. That's a lesson for a lot of people. So it's been great. Yeah.
We have about 2 minutes left. Any final messages, Mike and Patrick?
Ooh, I found it quite easy till you asked me that bit. I don't know.
Well, you go first, Patrick.
I think like anything, it's those moments that test you, but just like with exercise, you do need to have some sort of recovery before the next bit of testing. And I think that's one of the tricky bits, is that we keep thinking it's like you run a marathon, and then just as you think you're getting to the end, you've got to run another marathon. And that's psychologically has been tricky for me, and I think for everyone, but especially with that added responsibility that we've all got in schools, and that's the tricky bit. So it'll be nice to have a slight break from it and do the job that I'm used to rather than this one.
Great.
Patrick?
And I I think consolidation is going to be key to really think about where we were before COVID. Think about the things we've learned during COVID to put together a package of education that's going to have the greatest effect on the children that we teach, and to get the greatest progress. So really consolidate, not forgetting what we did before, but not forgetting what we've just done, and pulling it all together.
Yeah.
What an amazing story, I would say. And I think we should say that you're an outstanding school as well.
You are, yeah.
Because we've not said that, but I think it's nice to share with the world that you're an outstanding school.
But you feel it when you walk in. You can feel that. There's something about it that you know. I've been in other outstanding schools, but I think, you know, the fact that, for instance, you get somebody in to work with your senior leadership team, even though you're outstanding, you're still moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, Jenny, that getting through this will bring people together. You know, it's one of those things that it can either divide you apart or bring you together. And I think there's certainly evidence to show that it's bringing people together, especially when you go through a tough time together. I think hopefully in a year or so we'll look back and laugh and, oh, remember this time last year, and so hopefully it'll keep that collective spirit that really makes this place what it is.
Yeah, it's very strong, very strong.
Well, what can I say? Just, you know, well done to you both, and well done to your colleagues and to your community, you know, for what you've been doing through the past 12 months. I am in admiration, total admiration of what you spoke about, I have to say. And if I could stand, you know, an ovation, I would.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, because I know you're busy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So
Thanks so much.
thank you,
Okay.
and I hope to come and visit the school at some point when I go up north to see Jenny.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It would be great. It would be great. But thanks a lot. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.